And yeah, for today, our focus is about reading, everybody. So my name is Alvin. I'm the OET education specialist. So in this session, we'll get to know about OET reading, then review three key reading skills, and I'll guide you through some careful reading of a passage. I'll share some tips and tools to improve reading, and we'll have a Q&A at the end of the session if time permits. I think I only have one favor for all the participants. Maybe it will be very nice if you have a piece of paper with you at the side. I think it will be helpful if you could uh, participate in our activities, get a pen or pencil, and then you could participate while we are doing the activities. Because I'll try my best to make it engaging as much as possible. Although we know virtual mode delivery is a little bit challenging, but let's do it together. Okay. All right. So let's get started. And let's start with the basic of OET reading. I think, first of all, before we continue, I encourage you to send your answers on the chat box as we go along the topics. And if you have any questions, please feel free to tell me. All right. That will be very much appreciated. So, Alvin, what is OET reading? I think that's the first question you want to know. And what is it about? I think Tom gave an overview earlier, but not sure if you remember some of the details. So, can I ask everybody, how many parts are there in OET reading? I think there was a slide that Tom presented earlier. And how long does it take? Like, how many minutes do you need to finish it? And what kinds of text will you see? So I encourage you to send your answers on the chat box. Maybe I'm going to give you 10 seconds for that. And time starts now. 5 seconds. All right, Mac Dao Tian said 3 parts and 60 minutes. Oh, that's awesome. Perfect. Thank you for answering. And okay, 2-1, time's up. So let me just show you. So when it comes to OET reading, there are 3 parts of OET reading. There are A, B, and C. All right. And that was correct, Mac. It takes 60 minutes and there are 3 different types of text. There are different text types you will see. All right. So let me just tell you in part A, this is more of an expeditious reading. It's more of fast reading. So you will work with point of care texts, and this might be including dosage charts, care plans, medication tables, and this might be text you might refer to when treating a patient or a client. And in part A, there are 20 questions here. Next, in part B, you will see 6 short extracts from workplace texts. So, Alvin, what do you mean by workplace texts? I'm talking about email from a manager or a policy document, or it could be a document which contains guidelines with one question per text. And in part C, there are 2 long passages similar to journal articles or texts you will read as part as your professional development. It could be an article or it could be anything related to professional development. And there are 8 questions each for the 2 long passages. So I think I'd like to note that these texts you will encounter in OET reading subtests are the materials that you have been reading in your profession, especially in healthcare. So I think if you're quite worrying that you're not familiar with it, I think you might have read something similar to this when you were in the university, when you were still studying, or maybe when you're already working in the hospital or in a healthcare facility or a clinic. So those are all about the reading part. So reading part A is 15 minutes. Reading part B and C is 45 minutes together. And yeah, I think I would like to ask everybody in this meeting room, before we get into the skills, here's a question for everybody. How often do you read in English? Can you please send your answers on the chat box? Please send 1 if it's never, 3 sometimes, 5 all the time, and if it's in the middle of the options, 2 and 4. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 seconds, so please send your answers there. Okay, thank you. Tom said 5. Thank you. Volkong said 3, and 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so maybe you're still trying to reflect, how often do I read in English? Yeah, some people said 2 and 3. Okay, yeah, thank you. So I think in average, most of you had 3 or maybe sometimes, and I think that's pretty fine. Okay, that is the reason why we're here. We want to learn more strategies and some tips how we can improve our skills in reading, specifically in healthcare profession. So that's pretty fine. So we will try to talk about some strategies as well as we go along the topics. So I think let's get started. And we're talking about 3 reading skills at this point. We're going to focus on 3 reading skills that you probably hear about often, and you need to use these skills in the test. Maybe these are the skills you have been using in school as a maybe like a medicine student or nursing student, or maybe if you're a doctor in the hospital, if you're a pharmacist or a nurse, you use these skills already. And one of them might be a little unexpected, but let's talk about it. Okay. So I got a question to everyone. What reading skills do you need to use in OET reading? So it's a matter of guessing, right? So you don't need to get a perfect answer, but I'm going to give you 10 seconds to maybe share your thoughts about it. What reading skills do you need to use in OET reading? Please send your answers on the chat box, please. 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. So maybe you're still thinking about it, and one of it, yeah, that was correct. I think skimming and scanning, perfect. 110, that was great. And when you talk about it, maybe you're pretty much aware about skimming and scanning. So, but we have another skill that maybe you have been doing, but we could also focus today, which is careful reading. So the 3 skills for OET reading, and indeed for most reading in general, are skimming, scanning, and careful reading. So the question is, Alvin, now what do these words actually mean? What is skimming? What is scanning? And how are they different to careful reading, which is the third one? So I have here a few definition of the skills. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Maybe just send your answers on the chat box. Here are the 3 definitions of these skills. Can you match the definition to the correct skill? So just share your answers, please. So while you're chatting, so we got letter A, reading to understand, B, reading quickly and superficially, C, looking for specific details. And all right, so while you're thinking about it, I know you're still in the process of trying to see what's the difference, but let me just help you with this and guide you along. So when it comes to skimming, skimming is more of reading quickly and superficially. It's almost not reading at all. You are looking through a text trying to discover what is the text about. Or sometimes we say, how is the text organized? What is the purpose? All right. And when it comes to scanning, and on the other hand, scanning is basically looking. Well, I think I could describe it as hunting for particular words or numbers in the text. You're not actually reading here, you're just looking for something. And lastly, number 3 is careful reading. So it's almost the opposite thing. It's usually slow, it takes a lot of mental effort. This is when you're really trying to understand a writer's purpose. You want to know what is the writer's opinion or attitude, for example. So these 3 different skills, all right, these things are the skills we're going to practice today. So let's do the first one together. Okay, so I would like to talk about skimming first. But if you have any questions, please feel free to send your answers on the chat box. If none, maybe I would appreciate if you could click the heart button. I think that would be great. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this activity, okay? So I think it's good if we try to see some situations, and I want to know how a long text is organized. For instance, maybe is it by time or theme? Is it a single case study, or is it a review of literature? Um, what do you think is the skill that we need here? Do we need skimming, scanning, or careful reading? Could you please share your answers on the chat box, please? What do you think? I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Think about it. Time's up. So when it comes to skimming, when it comes to this text, this situation, I want to know how a long text is organized. This is most probably skimming. So skimming would be the best skill here. Why? Because you look through the headings, maybe the first sentence of each paragraph would be enough for you to know how a long text is organized. Okay, so let's go with the next situation. So second, um, Alvin, I want to know a writer's opinion. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds. What do you think is it? Do you think it's skimming, scanning, or careful reading? Your 5 seconds starts now. You could also share your answers on the chat box if you'd love to. 3, 2, and 1. So you got here, I want to know a writer's opinion. So the answer here is careful reading. So if you would like to read carefully, simple skimming and scanning won't help you here. You need to evaluate and reflect to assess the opinion of the writer, and that's really important. So it goes beyond skimming and scanning. That is careful reading. And I have situation number 3 here. I want to find someone's name. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Think about it. 3, 2, 1, time's up. So if you want to find someone's name, basically this one is scanning. So I can scan for this. It's a very simple task, and that doesn't require you to understand anything. Just find it. Remember, I use the word hunt for this specific word. Remember that you just need to get the specific detail, and that's it. That is scanning. Okay. So I think in general, I would like to sum it up. In OET terms, these first two skills, skimming and scanning, are very useful. In fact, they are essential in part A because you only have 15 minutes uh, for this part, and you have 4 texts in part A and 20 questions. So you need to skim to get an idea of the function of each text and scan. You also need to locate the right place to find your answer. There's a little bit of careful reading in part A, but you will mainly be skimming and scanning, actually. On the other hand, when you talk about part B and C, skimming and scanning are quite not useful. This is because you don't have to hunt for the answers in the text. In part B, you have the text right in front of you. It's already in front of you. And in part C, the question will often tell you which paragraph to look in. And the questions in part C usually come in order, so you don't need to struggle to find the right place. Instead, your time should be spent reading to deeply understand the text. So again, part A is more about skimming and scanning, and part B and C is more about careful reading. Okay, I hope you could get everything. So if you could follow, I would appreciate if you could click the thumbs up button. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send your questions or feedback here. Okay, I would love to hear that from you. So,
So, Alvin, for
yep.
the people listening out there, what's the best way for them to practice doing this, to practice their skimming and scanning?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So I think when it comes to skimming and scanning, yeah, it's a good practice if you could do. Number one thing I might advise is do annotation. So I think if you annotate using a text, that will be very helpful. What do you mean by annotate? If you have a sheet of text, for example, and then you got your pen or pencil, you could get started with trying to, when you scan, just try to underline the important details. So after that, you could understand maybe the most important details. And when it comes to skimming, I think one tip is you could look at the headings, the subheadings, or the title of the tables and the charts, and that will be very helpful. Yeah. And I would just like to signpost, Tom, that later I could also give other uh, tips and strategies. So that was a good point. Thank you. Right. And yeah, I think if you got any questions, please feel free to ask. And that was a good one. And if you have any questions, just send it on the chat box. And I think let's go with skimming. So I think, as I told you, skimming is more about it's a quick reading. It's expeditious reading. So we're going to do a little bit of practice here. So I have here a question. So what information can this text give you? All right, so I'm going to give you 15 seconds to skim this text and tell me later what information can this text give you. All right, maybe you might say it might give me information about so on and so forth. So your time starts now. If you have a piece of paper, you could write it there. If you want to chat it on the chat box, that will be good. 3 seconds, 2, 1, time's up. So I think let's proceed with this. And if you try to look at it, the best answer will be this. So here I could suggest that this text will give you information about features of 3 types of DFUs. So the heading will tell you that the text is about assessing a DFU. And it says here, assessing a diabetic foot ulcer, right? And I think another thing you could do when you are skimming is that you can look at the first sentence of the the text. So the first sentence explains that you need to determine what kind of ulcer you're treating before beginning clinical management. And then when you try to skim as well, you could look at the heading across the top of the table. And down the left, we have the various features like sensation, necrosis, wound bed, foot temperature, and so on. So I think the best answer we could say here is I think it discusses features of 3 different types of diabetic foot ulcers. So that'll be the best answer. And yeah. So I think if you try to see the actual text, it has a lot more details. So here you can see all the detail on the screen, and you will probably need to read some of this answer or this to answer some questions in part A. But again, when it comes to skimming, it's going to be very useful in reading part A. So at this point, we only use skimming. We use skimming in this text because it's a very long text. It has a lot of information. So all you need to do is to run through some of the ways you can skip or you can skim to read the text. So yeah, I hope you get it correctly. If I hope if you could follow, you could also click the heart button, and I think that would be great. So that is all about skimming. And I think these are the tips I would like to tell to everybody. So if you are starting to apply skimming in your study habits, I would suggest you read titles, headings, and subheadings. So again, skimming is all about fast reading. And number 2, if you have a table or chart, read the labels. So as in the title or caption, but also the headings along the X and Y axis. And number 3, if there is a list or bullet points, read the first few words, or at least you know what it's about. And number 4, read the first sentence of the paragraph. I think it will be helpful to give you an idea what's coming next. And I think number 5, lastly, you can then run your eyes across the text and pay attention to the content words. So you could just have a very quick reading from up to down. And these words that you need to look for maybe are words related to people, things, places, and things like that. Okay, so uh, I think that was all about skimming. If you have any questions about skimming, that's number 1 skill. We got 3 reading skills today. So second is scanning, right? So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. So skimming is a very quick thing. I told you earlier, you don't need to read the whole text. On the other hand, we're going to talk about scanning, which is all about getting or looking for specific details. All right. So I would like to have a little bit of a practice here. So in here, the task we need to do, everybody, is to complete this sentence. All right. So the sentence says over 15% of sleep apnea cases are classified as blank sleep apnea. So I would like you to scan the text, find the specific word we need, and your 15 seconds starts now. Okay, so time's up. I think Mac, some people said mixed sleep apnea. So let's check the answer. So the answer maybe, wait, sorry, it hangs a little bit. Okay, there you go. You can see it now. So the answer here is mixed. So I think one thing you could do when you are scanning is first you need to get the keywords or the clue in the question. So you got here uh, over 15% of sleep apnea. So you got the quantity percentage 15%. So if you try to scan the text, there are only two percentages here, 80% and 15%. And then maybe from there you could read the whole text. So it says here in mixed sleep apnea, which accounts for about 15% of apnea cases, and so on and so forth. So the answer here is mixed sleep apnea. Okay, yeah, I think that was good. Very good answers, everybody. So that was all about skimming and scanning. And to recall everyone, skimming and scanning skills are good for part A. There's a little bit of careful reading in part A, but not too much. Uh, Careful reading is mostly applied in part B and C. So at this point, I think we're going to do more of careful reading practice. So we are now going to our third reading skill practice. Okay. So the third one is careful reading. But before I proceed, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And if none, I would appreciate if you could click the thumbs up button. That'd be great. And uh, let's keep moving. So I think, thank you. So when it comes to careful reading, as I mentioned earlier, just to refresh your minds, this is much more of slow reading. So it is usually slow than skimming and scanning, because skimming and scanning is fast reading. So in careful reading, you are trying to relate, to engage with the text and deeply understand what the writer is trying to express to you. So we're going to go through a series of steps that are useful to help you read carefully. I think let's get started. So before we proceed, I think I would like to ask everybody, how many hours of sleep did you have last night? Can you please send your answers on the chat box? I would say that I got 6 hours. Okay, not enough. Yeah, I think. What about the others? Maybe you could share to us how many hours of sleep did you have last night? So let us check your answers. 7, yeah. 6, 7. I think most of us get that. And thank you for that. And how about this one? What things affect your sleep? So, for example, if you're on your bed, are there some things that stop you from sleeping? Or sometimes, what are the things that make it really difficult to sleep? So, some people, environment, noise, it could be one, or it may be stress could be another problem, right? Or maybe uh, other factors. There are many other factors. Temperature, it could be, great. So I think those questions I would like you to reflect on your own, because later we're going to deal with the text related to that. But before we do a practice activity related to careful reading, let's have a little bit of an activity about vocabulary words, okay? Because it will be helpful if everybody in this room are on the same page when it comes to the words used in the text, okay? So here's the instruction. Here's some vocab from the upcoming reading that I'll show you later. I would like you to match the words on the left, which are all in blue colors, to the definition on the right, okay? So I think your piece of paper will be very helpful here. And if you don't have one, you could send it on the chat box. I'm going to give you 90 seconds, but before that, I would like to read the words you need to understand. Inadequate, detrimental, obstructive, function, distinct, rare, and account for. Your 90 seconds starts now. 30 more seconds. You might share your answers on the chat box, or you could write down your answers on your piece of paper. Thank you.
Chúng tôi mong nhận được cái sự tương tác của các bạn nhé, để mà chúng ta có thể thực sự học hỏi được từ cái buổi ngày hôm nay của Alvin. Thì rất là mong các anh chị và các bạn cùng tương tác, và chúng ta thử sức với các cái bài tập ngắn mà Alvin đã đem tới cho chúng ta. Xin cảm ơn.
All right, so I think time's up. So I think, but at this point, I assume that you have already answered it. I saw a few answers, 1E, 2F, 3A, 4C. So let's check it out together, okay? Let me guide you through it. And these are the answers. Okay, so I think before we proceed to our practice activity, let me just talk about the vocabulary words you might encounter later. So you got the word inadequate. So inadequate means not enough. So the main word adequate, which means sufficient or enough, and you got the prefix in, which means not, right? So you might say that the resources provided in the hospital were not enough, or were inadequate. For number two, detrimental. So you could look at the main word detriment. So you just add al suffix. So it means harmful. Detriment means damage or harm. So makes sense. Number three, obstructive. So if you are familiar with the word obstruct, so when you obstruct something, it means you block something, you stop something. So therefore, the answer here is causing a blockage, something that stops something. Okay. And for number four, function, it means operate. Distinct, it means separate. Rare is uncommon. And seven, account for, it means it is comprised. Yeah, so the main word, I think we usually, when it's an easier way to say in number seven that, for example, if you put it in context, like women comprise more than half of the university or the population of the hospital, for example. Yeah, things like that. So yeah, I think that's all about the vocabulary words we're going to use. Do you have any questions? If you have any questions, please feel free to send us a message. If none, I would appreciate if you could click the heart button so you could proceed, or we could proceed. And yeah, I think I want you to know what is your score. If you got 7, that would be great. Okay, so let's proceed now with our activity. So I think I would like to ask you a question, everyone. So tell me, why is sleep important? So sleep is very important for many reasons, right? So, but I would like you to realize and reflect on this question, because our text here will be all about sleeping and uh, some concerns related to that. So using your knowledge of English, ladies and gentlemen in this room, I got here the texts. So can you imagine the words or type of words which are missing? Okay, so I would like you to guess the missing words, but I'll give you perhaps 60 seconds to work on this, and just try to write down your answers on a piece of paper or send it on the chat box, okay? So your 60 seconds or 1 minute starts now. Okay, once again, who missed the instruction, I'd like you to answer the blanks, guess the missing words. Okay. 30 more seconds. 15 seconds. 5. And time's up. Okay, so yeah, I think we got a few answers here. I think just try to send your answer. Just keep it coming. Okay. So you got the answer number 4, mentally. 5 is life. We got prevent, combat, system, and function. Okay. I think that is a good try. Thank you very much. So I think let's try to see what are the answers. Okay. Let's do it together. Maybe let's try to reflect on this. So for number 1, maybe let me read the sentence. Studies have shown that sleep is essential for normal immune system function and to maintain the ability to blank disease and sickness. So I think we got some answers from the chat box saying it could be prevent, it could be combat, or fight. So let's see. The best answer here will be fight, or I think combat will be also okay. All right. So any other synonyms will do. So I think you got a clue here, ability to blank disease and sickness. So it has something to do with what do we do with negative things. So it could be fight or combat, right? Or yeah, things related to that. So let's go with number 2. Sleep is also essential for normal nervous blank, number 3, and the ability to function, so on, so forth. So let's try to see the answer. So the answer here, number 2 is system, and number 3 is function. Okay, I think you could already see the clue. Nervous. So you got the word a body system. So what is the next to that? Nervous system. And if you got the word nervous system, so maybe you got what does it do, right? So it's ability. And I think there's another clue here talking about ability because you got the word and. So another ability. So meaning to say it could be function. Function and the ability to function both physically and blank. So the right answer here is mentally. I think I saw an answer here earlier, mentally. Yeah, that was perfect, Mac. Thank you. So I think one clue here is already physically. So you got the word physically suggests, maybe we could think that it could be a word that contrasts physically, or it could be another um, uh, aspect of a human being. So it could be mental aspect, right? And for number 5, in addition, sleep is vital for blank and for normal healthy cell growth. So here the answer is learning. So sleep is vital for um, learning and for normal healthy cell growth. I think you could think of other words here, other possible words, but these are maybe the best words we could share and answer. So yeah, so I think that's it. Wait, do you have any questions about the words we got here? I think um, everything is okay. So let's keep moving. And I have here a little bit of an uh, activity about finding all the addition words. So sometimes when you do careful reading, it's very important that you also try to see what are some repeated words, okay? And those repeated words could also give you an understanding of the text. So if you try to see here, there are so many additives or words that show addition, for example, like and, also, and, both, in addition, and so on, but they are just in different places. So this is related to the continuation of the text, okay? So you got here the last part of the text, the last sentence, blank sleeps huge importance, so on and so forth. So I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to think about it. Can you guess the word? What is the missing word here? Just like what we did earlier, I suggest you get some clues and then try to see what's the answer. Your time starts now. Once again, for those who missed it, I'd like you to find what's the answer for number 6. You got 30 seconds, actually, only 15 seconds left now. Keep going, thank you. 10 seconds. Time's up. Okay, so let me just show you the answer. So the blank that we're looking for here is in the beginning of the paragraph. But before I give you the answer, maybe I would like you to reflect on the use of these words towards the middle. Okay, so you can see that blank sleeps huge importance to people's lives. Scientists and medical professions do not fully understand this complicated physiological phenomenon. So if you remember, all of the things here are all additives. You got and also in addition, but suddenly you got the word do not fully understand. So it means contrasting, opposite, right? So the best answer we could put here is despite, okay? If you're going to read it, it goes like, despite sleep's huge importance to people's lives, scientists and medical professions do not fully understand this complicated physiological phenomenon. So this kind of contrasting linker can be very important in text. And I think especially in OET Part C, uh, because it gives you an idea what is the opinion, what is the attitude of the writer in the text, okay? So that's very important when you do careful reading. And yeah, so I think if we're going to sum it up, these were the things that we've done so far in careful reading, everybody. And we activated prior knowledge, which is very useful in OET. Examined vocabulary. You also set a purpose. You used context and language knowledge. We also talk about some linking words, which is very important. So I think I already just choose here some questions that could be very helpful for us to understand more how to apply careful reading into texts. Okay, so this time our format is question and text. Question and text. So you're going to give me the answer based on the text. Okay, so I would like you to get ready. And if you are ready, can you please click your thumbs up button so we could proceed? Okay, so let's keep moving. So here is our first question. Thank you. I'm seeing some thumbs up reaction. So what two things can negatively impact health? So as you can see, the text is something related to sleeping. All right. I'm going to give you perhaps 15 seconds for looking at the answer. Time starts now. Okay. Time's up. But at this point, I would like you to reflect if that is the correct answer. Maybe 5 more seconds to think. And again, while you're thinking, the question we have here is, what two things can negatively impact health? Okay, so if you have any questions, please write it down on your sheet of paper or send it on the chat box. And let me give you the answer. So the answer for question number 1 is lack of sleep and disturbed sleep. So again, we're looking for two things. And the clue words we're looking for is negatively impact health or negative thing. And we're talking about two things. So maybe to find the answer, Alvin, how do you look for it? It's quite difficult, or I was quite confused. So what I could say is to look for the answer, especially for this kind of question, look for phrases that indicate or show impacts on health related to sleep. So again, you got the clue word negative, right? So what are the negative words that we have in the text? So we got lack. It could be also severe. It could be also inadequate, right? So those words are negative. So from there, the text mentions inadequate sleep, right? Specifically lack of sleep and disturbed sleep. So maybe another easy way to see is what we call, maybe looking for what we call listing expressions. So when you say listing expression, we're looking for some expressions that gives one the examples. It could be such as A, B, C, D, or it could be are the following. Which are the following? A, B, C, D. So in this case, you got such as A or B. Okay, so those are things you could do. And how about this one? Oh, yeah, I think if you don't have any questions, we could proceed with question number 2. So the next question is about what is sleep apnea? Okay, the same thing. All you need to do is to find the answer. I'm going to give you 15 seconds and time starts now. 5 seconds. Time's up. Okay, so in here, you got some answers here. Interrupted breathing during sleep. And let's check out the answer. So here it is, what is sleep apnea? So this is a type of disturbed sleep. So I think if you try to look for it, Alvin, what is a strategy? Can you give us a tip how to look for it? To find the answer, I think you need to identify how the text defines sleep apnea, right? So we can scan the text and see if there is the word sleep apnea. And I think here you could see it here. And if you see the word, after you scan, you try to look at the whole phrase or the sentence. There, it's beside a word, disturbed sleep, meaning it could be the word that we're looking for. So inside the parenthesis, sleep apnea, it's related to disturbed sleep. Yeah. So very good. I think everybody did well. And how about question number 3? What are 2 possible causes of sleep apnea? We still have one more question after this. For careful reading, but I'm going to give you 15 seconds to answer this one. Again, we're looking for what are the 2 possible causes of sleep apnea. So you got 15 seconds. Time starts now. 5 seconds. Time's up. Okay. So I think if you try to look for it, to find the answer, we're looking for the 2 causes. So therefore, we might see some keywords that might show causes, which, for example, is because, right? And then you can see here, you can see because followed by mechanical problem and neurological disorder. So the format is like because A, but can also B, right? So the answer here are mechanical problem or neurological disorder. Yeah, so that's it. Okay, so we're doing great. And let's go with number 4. So for number 4, this is going to be the last question for careful reading before we continue. The question is obstructive sleep apnea mechanical or neurological? Again, is obstructive sleep apnea mechanical or neurological? So I'm going to give you 15 seconds to look for the answer. Time starts now. Okay, time's up. So at this point, maybe you could wrap up. Again, the question is obstructive sleep apnea mechanical or neurological? So I think if you try to see it, okay, the answer here is coming from this part, okay? So maybe, Alvin, how do you look for it in a matter of 15 seconds? Maybe one thing you could do to find the answer is you need to scan what we need to look for, which is from the question, we're looking for obstructive sleep apnea. So you try to scan the text from top to bottom. So you got the word obstructive sleep apnea. And after that, you got a phrase, a where phrase, where breathing is interrupted by a physical block of airflow despite the body's efforts to breathe normally. So I think from there, we could try to differentiate first. Like, think about it. What is the difference between mechanical or neurological? So from our prior knowledge, when you say mechanical, it has something to do with a physical function, right? And neurological, it is related to the nerve cells function or nerve cell concerns. So therefore, if you try to scan the text, and then you saw, oh, this is obstructive sleep apnea, and then where breathing is interrupted by a physical block of airflow, meaning to say, we're talking about a physical function. So therefore, the answer here is mechanical. So once again, I could say that one strategy is to try to see what are the clue words from the question. Then you try to see it from the text. And then from the text, you try to reflect what could be the best answer. Okay. So that was all about careful reading. And yeah, so I think if you have any questions, please feel free to send us. And if none, I would encourage you to click your heart button so we can keep moving forward. Okay.
Các anh chị và các bạn có theo kịp không ạ? Nãy giờ tôi thấy cái phần tương tác của chúng ta hơi im lìm đó, cho nên là chúng tôi cũng không hiểu được rằng là những cái phần những cái activities mà anh Alvin vừa mới đem đến cho chúng ta là có phù hợp không ạ?
All right. Yeah, I
Thì
think
chúng ta vẫn còn một số những câu hỏi và một số những cái bài để chúng ta thêm về kỹ năng này của tương tác và tham gia của các anh chị và các bạn nhé.
all right. So yeah, thank you for that, Quay. And maybe you could ask questions anytime if you would love to. And I know reading is a little bit tricky for some, and I think the best way for you to work on it is to practice, right? So I would encourage you at the end of the day to practice, practice, practice. So yeah, I think let's keep moving. And okay, so I think I would like to sum up with the things we have done. So I think we have done careful reading, and we also talked about skimming and scanning, right? So earlier, the things we did were mostly non-OET questions. So those questions might not be similar to the OET exam. At this point, we're going to move forward to the OET type question or OET style question, okay? And actually, this is going to be the last part of the practice we have today, okay? So we have here the sample question. So, all right, this is a text, okay? This is a question stem saying, you can see the question stem at the right box. It says here, obstructive sleep apnea, ellipsis, so on and so forth. So in this activity, I want you to tell me what are the relevant or the important sections of the text related to obstructive sleep apnea. Okay, maybe you could write it on your piece of paper or you could send it on the chat box. That would be great. I'm going to give you perhaps 60 seconds for this. Again, I would like you to tell me what are the important words from the text about obstructive sleep apnea. Okay, so you might send it on the chat box and or write it on your piece of paper. Your time starts now, 60 seconds. Okay, 30 seconds more. So for those who haven't heard the instructions, so what we need to do, I would like you to tell me what are the important or related words to obstructive sleep apnea. You could send it on the chat box or you could type it on your sheet of paper. 15 seconds. Okay, time's up. There you go. So I think you guys are all doing great. And let's try to see what are some related words to this, okay? And let me show you. Okay, so I think one answer I got here, you can see that these are the sections that mention obstructive sleep apnea. So let's try to concentrate on them, okay? You see the blue underline. So it says here, with over 80% of cases diagnosed as obstructive sleep apnea, where breathing is interrupted by a physical block of airflow. I think you could see and scan the text. You can see the exact word obstructive sleep apnea here, right? And let's try to see another one. There you go. So you can see that it's somewhat related to mixed sleep apnea because it says here in mixed sleep apnea, which accounts for about 15% of apnea cases, there is a transition from central to obstructive features. So therefore, it is also related to obstructive sleep apnea. Okay, so now we're going to proceed with the question. Okay, so that is one strategy. Maybe if you're trying to work on the uh, reading subtest, what I could say is try to see the clue words or the important words from the question and then try to find it or scan it from the text, or you can also skim the text. Okay, and then after that, you could try to continue with the options. So now I'd like you to uh, see the options, take 20 seconds, and can you try to answer the question? I would like you to focus, but don't rush. Read all the options before you choose, okay? And you got 20 seconds. Time starts now. Ten seconds more. Five seconds. All right, I would like you to wrap up your answer. So what do you think could be the answer here? Okay. All right, I know some of you are still thinking. Maybe I'm gonna give you extra 10 seconds to think about it. All right, I'm seeing some answers now. Kai said D, Max said D, Hong Pong said B. Okay, so we got diverse answers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, time's up. So let's try to see here, okay? Maybe what I'm gonna do, instead of giving you the right answer, let's try to talk about each option one by one, okay? So I think let's try to see letter A. Obstructive sleep apnea is mechanical and neurological in origin. Okay, so I think nobody answered A, but maybe some of you did, but let's check it out. If you try to see it, let's check each answer and eliminate as we go. So if you try to see this, you got the underlined expressions or the underlined phrases, obstructive sleep apnea, where breathing is interrupted by a physical block of airflow. So you can see that this is not correct because it says obstructive sleep apnea is more mechanical, physical. It's not neurological. So meaning to say, this is not correct because in the option it says is mechanical and neurological in origin, but it's only mechanical. So the answer is not letter A. Okay, so let's go with letter B. Letter B says obstructive sleep apnea accounts for a minority of cases of sleep apnea. So you could also see here the underlined expression or the phrase with over 80% of cases diagnosed as obstructive sleep apnea. So what is the answer? It's not the answer as well. Why, Alvin? Because it says it accounts for over 80%. So you could look at the quantity, the percentage is 80%, right? So that's a majority. It's over 80%. Therefore, it's not the minority. But in the option, if you try to look back, obstructive sleep apnea accounts for a minority of cases of sleep apnea. So the answer is not letter B because it says minority. It's actually majority. So let's go with letter C. Obstructive sleep apnea occurs before central sleep apnea. So we're talking about time data or time detail, right? So it's a temporal thing. So let's try to see if this is the answer. It's not also the answer because in mixed sleep apnea, we can see that the person starts, if you see here, in mixed sleep apnea, let me read it, which accounts for above 15% of apnea cases. There is a transition for those people who are quite not familiar. Transition means change, right? So there is a change or transition from stage 1, central, to stage 2, obstructive features. Okay, so therefore, it starts with central sleep apnea and moves to obstructive. So the answer is not letter C because it says here occurs before central sleep apnea. Well, in fact, it occurs after. Okay, so therefore, I think everybody got a good answer. The answer here is letter D. So if you try to read it, obstructive sleep apnea can occur with central sleep apnea. And if you try to see here, we can see why in the same section. Um, in mixed sleep apnea, a person may experience both central and obstructive. So this is the correct answer. Okay. So yeah, I think that's a good practice for everybody. But actually, I just prepared this one example so that you could try to vibe or could feel how do we do the OET reading subtest step by step. Okay, so that is one way of doing it. Maybe you might also try to explore on your own reading habits and own reading strategy, and that would be really great. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send on the chat box, or if you don't have any, you could click the thumbs up button so we can keep moving forward. Okay, and yeah, okay, I think well done, everybody. So I think at this point, what I'm going to sum up is what we have done so far. So in careful reading, we've done activating prior knowledge. We examined the vocabulary, if you remember the first part, the blue boxes and the black boxes. We also try to see the purpose of the text. We used context and language knowledge. We also noticed some linking words like and, additives as well. In addition, we also talked about despite. So also, we talked about reading with purpose using predictions. If you remember, I asked you what could be the missing word, right? And I think this is something that we could do next time, summarizing, because summarizing might take much longer time if we do it step by step. But again, these are often unconscious activities that you do when reading carefully. Okay. I think I would like to sum it up by sharing to you some resources for reading. So I think first of all, on the OET website, you can see some free sample tests available. I think I can send you the link on the chat box. You can print them out or try the computer version if you're taking OET on the computer. I think something that we could also add in our presentation later, we could show you how to book the test after this discussion or during the Q&A if you're asking. I think I saw a question about that. And we've also got we also got a guided practice video and more practice tests available on the OET store. And for the second, if you'd like to have more guidance, we have the reading skills course. This is online and self-directed. So all you need to do is to learn the skills and strategies for OET reading with videos, activities, and sample tasks. I think what I'm going to do later is to send to you the link of the YouTube channel that we have. So that you could see some activities, or it will be also helpful if you could ask VNCP because I believe they offer quality preparation also. So let's go with number 3. I think another thing that I could say to everyone is trying to access other external resources. So I would recommend non-OET resources, which are, for example, breakingnewsenglish.com. Here you can find texts on different topics and different levels of difficulty. So it could be ready-made lessons and activities so that you could also test your reading, vocabulary, or grammar skills. So you could try to practice on your own, or it will be good if somebody could help you, like a reading partner. It will be really good as well, so that you could try to assess each other's improvements as time goes by. And number 4, I think what I could say is this could be helpful for reading part C as well. Finally, maybe you could read medical journals and publications. Of course, these are great ways for you to practice professional development. Maybe conversations in online newspaper with articles similar to those in reading parts will be very helpful so that you could see what's the difference between opinion 1, opinion 2 of the author or the authors, right? So those things can be very helpful. And yeah, I think lastly, these are some general tips I would like to share. So, Alvin, how do we improve our reading skills? So I think number one, I would like to tell everybody in this room that make sure you're using the right skill at the right time. Okay. So skim and scan in part A, but work on reading carefully in parts B and C. Okay, I think I would like to relate it for those who are working already in the hospitals, clinics, or healthcare facilities. Yeah, of course, if you are in need of urgent actions, we use skimming and scanning, right? But if you have the luxury of time trying to read a long article, I think you will use careful reading skills. So also number two, I would like you to think that you need to read with purpose, okay? So in this discussion, in this session today, what we're talking about is perhaps focused more on reading for the purpose of taking an English assessment, okay? On the other hand, if your purpose is improving your reading skills, for example, for lifelong learning skills, for example, you need to see how could you prepare and get an overall idea to learn something new, okay? And number three, read actively. So I think there's no other way for us to improve our reading skills if we don't read, right? So we need to set our study habits. So this can mean when you are reading, you need to highlight or underline. This is what I said to Tom also to the question that what is the best tip if we want to improve reading, especially in skimming and scanning? We need to I would encourage you to annotate as a practice. Annotating is very simple. You just need to highlight, circle, underline important details, and you try to visualize in your mind what is in the text. Predict what's coming next, and ask yourself at the end of the text, what is it about? What is your opinion? Okay. And for number four, I would advise you to make the most of online tools. I'm going to share to you some links later. Build language and vocab and grammar. And of course, the accuracy is also important. And I think lastly is for you to build stamina. When we say build stamina, what is that, Alvin? OET reading is 1 hour and it follows a 40 minutes listening skill test. What do you mean by that? Meaning to say, I would like you to make sure that you practice reading for long stretches of time without any distraction. Meaning to say, you could focus on reading something for an hour, right? And then later, maybe you could follow practicing listening because that's how OET, reading and listening subtests, uh, work, okay? So doing it will be really beneficial for you. So I think at this point, that will be it.